Hi everyone, my name is Kristen Lagan and welcome to my case study presentation of Triplicity. So I wanted to go into some really brief detail about the contents of this presentation. We're going to start with the overview of what Triplicity is, why it got started, some of the challenges, the solutions, and the impact of Triplicity. And then we're going to go into the design process, talking about empathizing and understanding our user, being able to identify, define, and ideate some of the problems and the challenges, being able to express what that prototype, high fidelity, mid fidelity, and high fidelity prototype looks like. Then we're going to move into the testing phase, getting some usability testing done based on those prototype versions, and then finally the outcomes of that, this whole project. So first off, we're going to go through an overview of kind of the idea behind Triplicity, where it started from, and some of the challenges that users or that travelers have noticed. And so speaking to travelers in general, I wanted to understand some of the things that they're having to combat, some of the barriers they're having to face, such as losing track of your budget. I know nothing's more frustrating than setting a budget for a travel or for a trip that you have planned and then going way over budget. That's definitely a frustration that I spoke to a lot of people about that they've noticed they're having. And on top of all of that, it's also the frustration associated with having to decide everything and having to keep track of everything during the trip planning process. And then finally, being in this kind of in-between post-pandemic world, there's also this concern associated with maintaining your safety, meaning your health safety specifically, and being able to stay up to date on alerts relating to COVID-19. And so with those challenges in mind, I developed Triplicity. It's an app designed to help users plan for their trips throughout from end to end, set and track their budgets, as well as stay up to date on any health-related travel restrictions. And then leading into the impact, I was going to go in a little bit more detail about the impact towards the end, but I wanted to show a brief overview of some of the things that were found. I noticed that there was a 20% increase in task 7 success rates, and then a 10% increase in the success rates for task number 4. So I'll explain what those tasks are in a little bit. So first off, leading into the initial research, I knew that I needed some type of solid foundation, trying to understand what a traveler is, why travelers travel, what kind of behaviors they engage in, and how they even travel, because I knew that I needed to start somewhere. So I did 5 different interviews with 5 different individuals with a range of different travel experience, and from that I aggregated 4 common themes associated with traveling behavior. And these themes were really just like the safety concerns associated with COVID-19, this pandemic that we're experiencing. Many travelers noted that maintaining and keeping a budget is super, super important, because if they don't, they go over budget. There's a lot of frustration involved. Same with maintaining safety in regards to being able to share your itinerary with friends and family, making sure they know where you are throughout the trip plan or throughout the trip process. And then finally, being able to keep track of all of your different travel documents, such as a picture of your passport and your vaccination card and a picture of your plane ticket. It was important that all of that information was in a centralized location for users. So with this, throughout the whole presentation, you'll see different quotes that I pull from the interviewees that I had, and this was one of them. They spoke on the fact that they really do worry about COVID travel restrictions, and it's hard to keep track of everything relating to every day it's changing, or every day things are changing related to like the travel restrictions that people have to experience. And so I know that this was important and something that we needed to incorporate into Triplicity. So leading from the initial research with the interviews that I did, I developed Taylor. Everyone meet Taylor. They are the user persona. They're a 35-year-old dental hygienist, single individual, and really they need an app that allows them, or they need some type of method, some type of thing that allows them to plan their trips with ease, track everything, consolidate everything into one app, and be able to share that information with friends and family as needed. A lot of their behaviors are associated with being able to travel, wanting to experience new things, wanting to have a really detailed plan and itinerary that can be shared, and then be just the fact that they get really frustrated when it comes to making all of these different decisions associated with the trip planning process. That is something that I also wanted to kind of integrate into Triplicity while developing this application. And some of the pain points, just like a lot of my interviewees said, were that there was like a lot of budget constraints. Being able to track and maintain a budget is key. Being able to stay safe, and just the overwhelmed, frustrated feelings associated with trip planning. So those are things that we needed to keep in mind when I developed Triplicity. So leading into just digging deeper into understanding what my user kind of target user was, I wanted to do a little empathy mapping to understand their behaviors associated with they say, think, feel, and do, as well as some of the gains and the pains that they experience. So Taylor, his behaviors center around being able to maintain their safety while traveling, being able to track and stick to a particular budget, being able to plan for a trip from end to end, and then finally having an app that encompasses all of these different factors so that it can be a centralized application. So coming from that user persona, I developed a set of, or a particular sentence of user insight. I thought it was important to kind of summarize everything that I'd learned so far from interviews, and I'd found that helping users plan their trip, stay connected to family, staying on budget, and keeping track of all of these travel documents can help reduce stress in users. On the right-hand side, you'll see 3 different quotes that I pulled from my interviews, and they mainly center around just being able to maintain your safety, your health safety while traveling, and also sticking to a budget goal that they have in mind. So coming from that, I thought it was also important to kind of develop a problem statement to identify what the key problem is for users. So many of the users noted that there were concerns while planning for their trips, leading to an increased level of frustration for users. And then on the flip side, we can identify the fact that helping users combat barriers to the problems that were addressed can overall encourage a positive experience for users. So with this, I knew that I needed to start somewhere when it came to prioritizing features. So I did a feature prioritization matrix to identify 3 different kind of key ideas that I wanted to incorporate into Triplicity. The 3 being the itinerary tracker, allowing users to track and plan for their trip, the budget calculator, and then finally trip planning support from end to end of trip. Leading into a journey map, this kind of goes back to digging deeper into what my user is, being able to identify what their pains are, what the opportunities to kind of add additional support for them, and being able to identify what their behaviors are throughout their trip planning process. So I wanted to kind of, like I said, go into more detail about what Taylor is experiencing. First off being, they really need a method to plan for their trips. Being able to maintain and create their budget. They need a way to keep track of all of their different travel documents that you need to have. And then finally, they need to be able to stay connected to family even when they are on these trips. So with the research, this also kind of goes into that foundational research is super important to have. I wanted to kind of investigate the other companies and the other applications that are involved in this travel space, just to kind of see what's out there, see some features that I should actually kind of integrate and include into my own application. So I did some competitor analysis. I did a SWOT on these 5 direct and indirect competitors. And many of these competitors had like really user-friendly onboarding processes. Some applications offered a live travel agent to provide itinerary distribution for users. They had some like really key competitive advantages that I knew were important for me to think about going through the like additional iterations of Triplicity. So I thought that was important to include in this presentation. So getting into the UI portion of Triplicity, I am not a super great artist at any way, but I wanted to get kind of just like this general layout of how the application is going to look. So you can see here you have an example of the splash page, the home page, and what the account page would look like for users. So leading into the mid-fidelity prototype from those sketches, like I said, I just wanted to get just like a basic level layout of the UI and how the features are going to be tested when I came into usability testing. You can see here, there's Wanderlust is listed on a lot of my different sketches and my minimal prototypes because I did some rebranding over time after some usability testing to get to Triplicity's name now. Okay, so a usability testing plan. I knew it was important to kind of target different key tasks that I wanted for my users. And so I knew I wanted to target at least 5 to 10 different tasks for testing. And I came up with these 7 tasks. They're all associated with having the user sign up for the application, complete onboarding, being able to actually plan for a trip, putting in that budget, setting in that time frame, being able to collect all of those travel documents, such as like a passport and a picture of your plane ticket, and then finally viewing COVID-19 information. So when it came down to usability testing, I did usability testing with 5 different individuals, and I came up with about 5 different types of insight from those interviews. Once again, mainly associated with the iconography confusion. Some of the icons that I chose were a little confusing for usability for users. Some of my users really wanted the itinerary to be shareable. Going back into the idea of being able to share your itinerary helps users feel comfortable and feel safe in their environment. Some of my users said that they didn't want to have to access COVID-19 information from an external app. They wanted it all to be in-app, and so I knew I needed to make a change there. And then a couple other users also said that they wanted more than just COVID-19 health restriction, travel restriction alerts. I had a couple of people tell me that they wanted to know about how like another country is experiencing the flu and if that's impacting travel, or another type of outbreak impacting travel. It was something important for them to know about before or while planning their trip. So that was something I knew I needed to include as well. And then I had a couple people say that they really enjoyed the progress indicator during the onboarding process. So that was something that I needed to continue to do during high fidelity prototyping. And once again, another quote from another interviewee. She goes into detail about how she really wants to send that itinerary to family, and I wanted to make sure that that was included. That was a feature that was available to users. So leading into the second round of feature prioritization, once again, I knew that it was important from the insight that I derived from the interviews. I knew I needed to change the iconography and make that itinerary shareable, but I also had other bits of information from usability testing associated with adding like a calendar pop-up for users to indicate when they were going to depart and arrive back home from their trip. A currency indicator was also something someone had noted, as well as expanding those health alerts to not just COVID, but other health-related concerns that impact travel. On top of that, I made some confirmation pages. I needed to kind of build out the budget tracker and the trip planning guide as well. So moving into the high fidelity prototype, you can see here I thought it was really important to make sure that I displayed how data and the research that was done informed the design and the full design process, but also the end product that I was going to present today. So you can see here, this is the finalized project for Triplicity, or the finalized prototype for Triplicity, and most of the design decisions I made were really centered around, once again, expanding those health alerts for in-app engagement, altering the UI, making that itinerary option shareable for users, being able to add that currency feature. I did some rebranding, like I said, with the name, changing the name, and then adding in a feature for users to also put in notes to also kind of encourage that in-app engagement. Now, finally getting down to the outcomes of how the iterations and the usability testing impacted the final prototype. So you can see here, there was a 20% increase in the task success rate, for task number 7. And task number 7 was initially, I wanted users to be able to view COVID-19 health restrictions. But they, like I said, were going to an external site. So through iteration, I made sure that they clicked a particular button and all of the information was in-app, and so they didn't have to go to an external site to look for that information. And by doing that iteration, it helped with increasing engagement, and it also helped with success rate, improved success rate. And then moving to the secondary bar graph here, we see that there was a 10% increase in the task 4 success rates. As you can see, the task 4 is associated with having the user record their time frame, their departure, and their return of that trip. I changed some of the iconography, making it a little bit more visible, giving the user more control associated with putting in those time frames and adding that calendar pop-up for users, and that also increased the success rate for this task as well. So lessons and beyond this project, and it's important to note that the users that I interviewed had some experience traveling. I didn't really speak to anyone that, or I spoke to individuals that had around like 3 trips under their belt, but it's important to note that these results that I received might be a little different if my users had more or less experience with traveling. And like I said before, being able to edit that COVID-19 restrictions, travel restrictions, alert notifications portion, I'm expanding it to not just COVID, but to other travel restrictions as well relating to health, helped with reducing clicks. Putting it in-app really did help with that. Making it in-app helped with that. It also increased in-app engagement, and then it helped with quicker dissemination of information for users. And then finally, I learned from my users, just like Taylor, many just want like an effective and quick way to plan for their trips. They want to stay safe while traveling, and they really just want a way to track their budget to reduce frustration associated with going way over your budget during traveling. And looking to beyond the project, I would love to be able to alter the UI and do more testing to improve user flow for the interviewees that I experience or that I speak to. And then I'd also love to kind of build out the cultural immersion piece, or an additional feature that I kind of had an idea for, but I didn't get a chance to complete. And then I would also really love the app to be able to scan users' emails to make itineraries for them. And so with that, I appreciate you taking your time to listen to my presentation here. I will say this is my first UX case study, my first UX project that I've ever done, and so I've learned so much about the design process and how research and understanding a user can definitely define and just give insight into how the app should operate, the features that should be included in the application. It's been really interesting to see how research impacts the decisions that I make design-wise. So like I said, I really appreciate you taking your time listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, please don't afraid to, please do not, please reach out if you would like to. I have more projects here on my portfolio website, so please definitely check that out. You can use the QR code or the link here. But with that, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.